Rolls-Royce has updated the Cullinan for 2025, and I am not so sure. I'm not sure what I think about this design. It looks cool, the top half of the front end, and the lower half looks a little bit aftermarket body kitty to me. So what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to let you know exactly what I think about this design. We're going to compare it, analyze it from front, side, and rear, and also the interior, which has some changes to it, from the old one to the new one. I'm going to show you all the differences here, what I like and don't like about this design. So first, before we do that, before we jump into Photoshop, let's have a look at what this is all about from this article from Car and Driver. So a revised exterior design, fancy new interior materials, and the same powerful V12 engine. I'm glad that the V12 is staying alive here. The front end of this luxury vehicle has been restyled with new LED daytime run lights and a V-shaped line in the bumper. The V12 remains untouched, continuing to put out 592 horsepower in black badge form. Not bad at all. I mean, it's still a very powerful SUV. Actually, maybe not. These days we have SUVs making 700 horsepower, but this is more of a luxury vibe to it, so it's supposed to just float down the street. The 2025 Rolls-Royce Cullinan retains the iconic Pantheon grille, now illuminated for the first time on a Cullinan. The L-shaped LED strips that runs down the outer edge of the fascia. You have the bumper is heavily revised, and that is where I have some problems with this design, even though the slanted air intakes that create the V-shape, which Rolls-Royce says it's supposed to emulate the bow of a yacht. However, this is not a yacht, this is a car. And that's where things starts to clash for me in the front end. And specifically when you compare it to the rear end, it just, more on that in later when we jump into Photoshop. You have new character lines, ducts inwards from the taillight, the rear bumper restyled as well with a bolder look. And the Cullinan now rides on 7-spoke 23-inch wheels. Rolls-Royce also cooked up a new paint finish called Crystal Over that uses a lacquer infused with glass particle to create a subtle shimmer reminiscent of fresh snow under morning light. Very beautifully done there. Inside, the Cullinan now sports a glass panel stretching the full width of the dashboard, so we don't have any more. I do believe we had some wood in the old one, which felt proper Rolls-Royce to me. Now everything is turning into glass, everything is turning into pixels, and it's pretty sad to see that. I have a lot to say about this interior later on as well. The new screen is fixed in place and permanently visible. You have this glass panel which houses both the digital gauge cluster and the center touchscreen. The dashboard also includes an illuminated fascia panel, and owners can commission their own illuminated fascia design. A new clock cabinet to the left of the touchscreen. And this is something that I have a couple of things to say about as well. The rear seats, you can link up to 2 streaming devices to the rear screens. Seating functions include, of course, you have a massaging seat, heated and cooled seat as well. It's powered by the twin-turbo 6.7-liter V12, and the more potent black badge model also returns with a 592 horsepower and 664 pound-feet of torque. You have an 8-speed automatic with all-wheel drive. The pricing, no word on the pricing for this new Cullinan, but the 2024 model starts at $391,750, and this will be available to order this summer. So with that said, let's jump in here and have a look. What happened here? What did Rolls-Royce do with this design? It's a confusing design because the Cullinan, Rolls-Royce overall, is supposed to be stately, meaning that we want to have architectural approach to the design and not yacht design inspired. When you combine 2 completely different vehicles like that and you try to get the vibe of one into the other, usually it doesn't really work out. SsangYong, for example, the minibus tried to be a yacht from a side view. That did not work out, and I don't think it works out here in the front end of the Cullinan either. I definitely prefer the old Cullinan here because look at this. We have static lines all over this design, very clean, and as I said, architectural approach, and then you have this big Pantheon grille in the middle, typical Rolls-Royce. It's not a Rolls-Royce without this grille. I also like these headlights. We have a curvature here for the LEDs going around this corner, which is now a lot more emphasized, which I actually think looks great. So looking at the new one here, the top half of this is really cool. If we just cut the body right here, if we cut the front fascia right here and just focus on what's above this red line, I do love what's going on here, because I think these make the car look very stately and also emphasizes the width having these new LEDs. You can see that it kind of extended or grew from the previous one, which has the same shape but didn't extend as nowhere near as low as these new one does right here. I think it looks fantastic. But then what this creates when we have this boat shape, meaning that we have this V shape in the lower section, this, I'm afraid to say it, but this looks like a Mansory body kit. And Mansory tend to be not have their body kits well integrated in the whatever car they're applying the body kit to. And I think that happened here, but this is from Rolls-Royce in-house design. We have this massive surface that is completely open here now, and this creates a very interesting surfacing for the new Cullinan. There's nothing going on at all in this surface, and then you have all these static pieces or lines in the top half of the graphics, also vertical of course, that looks very Rolls-Royce. But have a look at what's happened in the lower section. All the static feel and the architectural approach, this line needs to have a connection to something going on in the lower section of the body here, or the graphics, but instead they cut this angle in this way, and now this has zero connection to nothing going on up here. And also this line is not static or vertical, horizontal. These lines also have angles to them. We do have a horizontal line down here at the bottom, but this V shape that we have, that's trying to look like a yacht from a front, to me it just does not work out in this case. I also don't like that these are the same thickness, creating this pretty cheap body kit look to this design. And that is the main reason why I 100% prefer the old one, which has a very nice and stately front end that does look very Rolls-Royce-y with the horizontal and vertical lines all over. But here there are like two completely different cars. If you put a 50% line here in the front end, this top part looks completely different from what's going on in the lower section. There's no connection there. I don't understand why Rolls-Royce went into this angle for the front end. Now looking at the side view, still a pretty clean looking design. Even the old, or the first pre-facelift Cullinan looked pretty cool. I mean, you can see that it is a Rolls-Royce, because we have this shoulder line up here, we have this curved line here at the bottom looking very nice, and of course super stately. You have a clear two-box design here. It doesn't get more two-box than this, because we have the box of the greenhouse going right here, and you can see that the hood, the front end, is completely vertical, having a confident forward-facing front fascia of the Rolls-Royce, and that's exactly what we want to see. We have a pretty thick D-pillar here and a nice angle to the overall rear end of this car. The side view doesn't look bad. I do think Rolls-Royce managed to make it look like a Rolls-Royce. This was their first SUV, and I think they did a decent job with the side view of this car. There's not really a lot of changes in the side here for the new 2025 Rolls-Royce. We still have this line. You can see it more clearly here in the white. It actually sits a little higher than when I sketched it on the black. It sits right here, going across the side and into the bumper. We do have new graphics in the rear end as well, and that is also one detail that I'm not so sure. I prefer the new one. Here you can see the new wheel designs as well. In this case, I do prefer the old wheels, because I think they look way more classy, way more luxurious. And now it feels, if we look at the interior later on as well, it feels like Rolls-Royce is trying to be almost like a sport SUV now, and not every single car needs to have a sporty attribution to it, because this is a Rolls-Royce. It's not supposed to be sporty. It's supposed to be 110% only luxury, and it feels like they're trying to, sprinkle in some sportiness in this design. So looking at the rear end before we have a look at the interior of this car, the new one looks better in the rear. The changes in the rear look better than what we had in the front end, for sure, 100%. But in this case, I still prefer, I'm gonna go again. I mean, I'm just being honest here with my opinions, and in this case, I still prefer the old one, and that has to do with the interesting looking layout of the lower bumper here. you can see we have much more stately design here. Again, I'm gonna come back to stateliness for this car because it doesn't get more stately than a Rolls-Royce. We have this straight line at the bottom. Now we have this bumper sticking out here, and I think this is an unnecessary styling feature for a Royce Cullinan to have that stick up like that. And we also have these interesting graphics for the tailpipes. And when you have a thick piece like this, thick piece of graphics in the bottom but very thin at the top, this feels like this exhaust graphics is being dragged down to the ground, and it just looks, again, very body kitted to me. I definitely prefer the old classic layout. We just have a clean rectangular exhaust pipe like we have here, instead of having this strange, very strange graphics for the new Cullinan when it comes to the rear end. I do think that is the only changes that we have on the rear end design. Now, last but not least, the interior here. And look at the new one, compare this to the old one. What direction does it feel like the Rolls-Royce is trying to go here when you look at this design? The new one looks like a sports shoe, like a Nike running shoe, or when I look at the graphics. And again, I'm not sure if that is the right approach. I mean, Rolls-Royce, of course, they do whatever they want to do. If they want to be more of a sporty brand, they can do that. But I thought that's what Bentley is for. Bentley is the sporty sibling of Rolls-Royce and Bentley. Rolls-Royce should always be about luxury. And look at the design changes here with this beautiful wood classic interior for the 2024 model year of the Cullinan. We have some chrome here, and if there's one car with the interior I want to see some chrome, it's definitely going to be in a Rolls-Royce. We have a beautiful steering wheel, analog gauges, and these are unfortunately now gone because now we have digital gauges here, and I don't think this looks more luxurious than having analog gauges. I was hoping that Rolls-Royce would still have the craftsmanship and have the gauges themselves being physically manufactured with some very nice details in them which you can analyze, and not turn everything into pixels like we're doing right here. Thankfully, we still have a couple of buttons here. Looks like, I'm not sure what type of buttons these are, but maybe they are for the climate control. Climate control actually sits down here, so thankfully we do have still physical buttons for the climate control settings, and some probably radio settings up here. We also have this clock that is integrated in the interior. Thankfully, this looks to still be a physical piece with the emblem for the Rolls-Royce, the logo down here, the Spirit of Ecstasy down here. And we also have this is the panel which customers can customize and do whatever they want with. This interior color, I mean, it looks cool for any other car than a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, because these colors just don't, I don't think, again, I think this is more Bentley approach. And if it's Rolls-Royce, I still want to have, even though it's not my personal taste, but I would still want to have old school material, more classic, handcrafted materials like this, than having it look like a sports shoe with the new Cullinan. This is a black badge, by the way. You can probably still get it with the wood in 2025, but the black badge is always going to be a little bit more sporty and also more powerful in its approach. So we're going to see where Rolls-Royce is how they're trying to rebrand their brand now, if they're trying to get more sporty or if they're going to dial it back. I at least want to see some analog clusters coming back in very, very expensive high-end cars like this. But unfortunately for 2025, it looks like we're going even more digital than before.